All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see you today. Today the topic is joy is a marathon. If happiness is a sprint, then joy is a marathon. Have you ever seen a competitive sprinter and a marathoner standing next to each other? The sprinter will be heavier and more muscular than the slim, ultralight marathoner. And the fastest sprinter in the world today is Jamaica's Usain Bolt, who weighs in at 207 pounds and is 6'5" tall. And the record holder in the marathon is Dennis Kimeto of Kenya, who barely shows up on the scales at 121 and is just 5'7". And I said that if happiness is a sprint, then joy is a marathon. And to illustrate the difference in this mindset and action between the two, you got to think of it sort of like a world-class sprinter. He needs immediate strength. He needs quick power and energy, and she's going to need it right now. Whereas joy, like the marathoner, is in it for the long haul. And Bolt's agent, Ricky Sims, reported that Usain never ran a mile. End of quote. Never ran a mile. The fastest man in the world has never run a mile. And a world-class sprinter could never be a competitive long-distance runner, nor vice versa. So we don't have to choose between the two when it comes to joy and happiness. And we can learn to compete well in both, because we need both. And they're not the same things. We can train ourselves to be mentally muscled up and properly fueled to win our sprint to happiness, but we can also prepare ourselves to be mentally slim endurance athletes who dig deep and keep chugging through the bouts of pain year after year towards our long-awaited finish line because we have joy. Now, Paul, who was no stranger to the ancient Olympics, said that because of joy, Jesus was able to endure and withstand incredible physical and mental punishment, Hebrews 12:2. And happiness wouldn't cut it while being beaten down, staring into his gaping wounds, and nailed to a post on a public walkway to be ridiculed or pitied by all that passed by. It took joy. There's a difference. And there's countless times where Jesus painted vivid pictures with his words so clearly that his followers could see and feel with him the example of shared happiness. And the times where he healed a crippled or demented or deceased child even further energized their happiness. Every time he used the words blessed or rejoiced, it usually can be translated calmly and supremely happy. The word blessed and the word happy are basically the same word in the Greek, and many times in Hebrew. Jesus built his ministry on happiness, but it continues because of joy. Now, if happiness is a sprint, then joy is a marathon. Now, are happiness and joy synonymous? Well, have you ever tried to get yourself back into shape after taking a few months or years off? That burst of happiness is what gets you out the door that first day. But it's joy that keeps you lacing up your skates, your shoes, your cleats, month after month and year after year. Now, most dictionaries use the words joy and happiness interchangeably. And they're even considered synonymous on your computer. But really, are they? Is joy and is happiness synonymous? And some Christian ministries even go as far as to steer their flock away from even using the word happiness because they think it's so fleeting, so worldly, and such a lesser word than joy. And they say that happiness is dependent upon what happens around you. You ever heard that? And they say that happiness is based on experience or external stimuli. And they grip their wide-margin Bibles and solemnly say, we're not of this world. But they may want to look around a wee bit because there is a difference between joy and happiness, and we need both. You desperately need both They are not the same. They never have been, and they never will be. Happiness and joy are both necessary and are uniquely different. Now, Bible scholars write that joy is purely a spiritual attribute, enjoyed only by those, as they piously claim, walk by the Spirit. Now, while I do believe that the Spirit of God can amplify our ability to manifest joy, I think there's a lot more that we can understand on this. Now, a while back, my wife and son and daughter-in-law and myself, we took a couple of Olympic hopefuls out to dinner. And the boy was a marathoner and his girlfriend was a sprinter. And their bodies could not have been more different. The marathoner was slim and bony while his girlfriend was buff and shapely. You know, he ate and drank anything I put in front of him. But when I bought the girl a beer, a strong, gray-haired man came over to the table and just took it away without ever giving me eye contact. And I was thinking, what? What just happened? And she said that was her coach, and he was just looking out for her. That every calorie must be accounted for if you want any chance of competing in the Olympic trials. Now, just like a sprinter and a marathoner, they're both runners. Happiness and joy are also similar. They're both necessary, but they're designed for very different life events. Happiness is for the immediate, while joy is what's going to take you down the road. And by the way, anyone can decide to be happy and can discipline themselves to maintain joy. It's not hard, and it's not just a Christian thing. Anybody on earth can do this. Happiness is for now, and joy is for the long game. Now, what's the difference between happiness and joy? Well, James, the half-brother of Jesus, begins to show us a separation when he says, quote, "My brothers and sisters, you will face all kinds of trouble, and when you do, think of it as pure joy." James 1:2. Now, I don't think of facing big problems as the path to happiness. Do you? No! Problems don't make me happy. You see? Joy must be different than happiness. You know, they cannot be synonymous. Now, verse 3 and 4 of James 1 show us that the long-distance benefits of joy. And it says that as we go through our tough times, quote, "Your faith will be tested, and you know that when this happens, it will produce in you the strength to continue. And you must allow this strength to finish its work. Then you will be all you should be. You will have everything you need." End of quote. See, joy can help you be all you can be, and it can help you acquire everything you need. You know, joy is some heap, big, powerful stuff. If God's already supplied all our need, I shouldn't say if, because we know God supplied all our need, we have to figure out how to get it. And so that comes through joy. Now, think of that term, your faith will be tested. I mean, Christians love this, and it sounds so very religious, but it's nothing more than the rigors of daily training and the mindset to continue down the stretch. That's all it means. I mean, you're basically testing yourself all the time. You know, if you're a runner or any kind of athlete. See, that's what joy is. Joy just keeps you going down the road. Through the hard times, through the good times, through the tough times, when you don't feel like it, you just keep going. You know, I've done a few marathons, and there's usually a point where you don't feel like running anymore. And the next point is, you know, no one's going to carry you. So you just keep moving. You just keep going. You don't feel like it, but you do it. One verse that got my wife through her toughest days is 1 Corinthians 10:13. "There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it." See, that gave her the kind of hope which is driven by joy. We're all going to go through tough times. Every one of us, with our jobs, with our families, with our children, with our parents, with our coaches, with our bosses, with our workmates. It's always going to happen. Heck, it even happens with your computer. When your computer goes down, usually you go down. But joy can help you not. Joy is for continuing down the stretch. Happiness is for now. So how do I make myself happy? How do I make myself happy? And our country is so cocksure that happiness is readily available to anyone who lives in this blessed land that it even wrote it in our Declaration of Independence. I mean, we are set up, this country's set up to make people happy. But people have to do something to make themselves happy. You know, we should all, each and all, pursue happiness. But how do we do that? How do we pursue happiness? Well, God gave us a few tools that no other creature on earth has the ability to utilize at will. And we can summon and spread happiness wherever and whenever we want to. We can decide to be happy or we can decide to be blah. It's a decision. We can decide to spread happiness too. And this is what's cool. Now, concerning children, Psalm 127:5 says, "Happy is the man that hath his quiver full." Okay. You know, my quiver only held 2, I guess. You see? But some of the most memorable times of my life are with my wife and children. Happy is the man that has his quiver full. It's Old Testament. You see, Proverbs 3:13 says, "Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding." Well, wisdom's something we can track down, and finding it is what's going to make us happy. If you had a little more wisdom, would that help you at your job, in your marriage, in your relationship? Sure, in everything. Fixing your computer? You know, he that handleth the matter wisely shall find good, and whoso trusteth in the Lord, happy is he. That's Proverbs 16:20. It makes us happy to remember that God's on our side. Has that ever helped you? Ever made you happy? Just thinking of that. Here's a good one that'll make you non-religious people happy. Quote, "Blessed is the person who doesn't feel guilty for what they do." Romans 14:22. Happy good, guilt bad. You know, God doesn't want us to be guilty. God wants us to be happy. Wait till we get to this next part. James, not this one, but James 5:11 says, "Behold, we count them happy which endure. You have heard of the patience of Job." Ever heard that verse? The word patience is cheerful endurance. Cheerful endurance and staying cheerful is what makes you happy. You know, the fact that this verse ties back to Job blows my mind. Job had to find a way to make himself happy after losing 10 children and all his finances, being the richest man in the East to being one of the poorest, and losing all your children. So what did he do? Well, he had some kind of cheerful endurance. He had to have. Remember, Job was the first book ever written that Moses ever wrote. It's written before the book of Genesis. You see, Job was a contemporary with Moses, believe it or not. He lived at the same time. He was well known, just like Jethro was, just like Balaam was. They were called Gentile prophets. And this guy believed God, Job, but he lost everything. He lost everything. And so Job had to find a way to make himself happy every day so he could keep his tank full. And then so he could get joy that would last him for the long haul. It's a tandem product, folks. Happiness just gets you kick-started. Then you got to make that joy just keep going. It doesn't make, you know, and then it'll help you keep going at the same time. So I'm going to talk about God's happy helpers now. God's happy helpers. If you're a human, which you are, being happy in this moment takes more than a decision. It takes more than memorizing a verse or a pithy saying. You know, it takes hormones. It takes hormones. You know, now you've all used these happy hormones since you were a child and you didn't even know you were doing it. And you've all been used by them over the years and didn't even know it was happening. Allow me to explain. Every time you watched a movie that is so intense you can't look away, or you read a book that has a storyline so well written that you just don't want to put that book down. You want to sit in your car and listen to that book on tape until it's over. You see, that feeling is a hormonal reaction. It's a hormonal reaction. It's not just interest. God designed us to be this way. Every time you watch a puppy licking ice cream off a laughing baby's face on YouTube, that feeling that makes you go, "Aww," it's hormones. That's hormones. It's not just your mind. It is hormones. Every time your heart aches and you feel pain of another when they share a sad story with you, or you watch a show that has a sad story, or you watch an event in the news that's sad, you see, it's simply hormones at work. So now I'm going to talk about 4 of the happy hormones. And the reason I call these happy hormones is because they're God's little way of making you happy in an instant. And you can control these most of the time. You can turn them on, you can turn them off through certain actions and behaviors. Now there's a disclaimer here. Hormones are not designed to be used for extended periods of time. That's the job of joy. Joy's job is that, to keep you going for extended periods of time. This is it's a kickstart is all it is. So the first I'm going to mention is something called endorphins. Now, they're the body's natural painkiller and mood enhancer. And they allow you to relax, to focus, and to laugh. They react with receptors in the brain that reduce our perception of pain, and they bring on a sense of euphoria. They release a positive feeling in the body similar to that of morphine, believe it or not. You see, if you want to feel euphoric and satisfied, when you're not feeling euphoric and satisfied, if you want to reduce stress and enhance your mood, then you hit the gym hard. Hit the gym hard. We're not talking about walking around the building looking at your Fitbit, you see. Find someone or something that makes you laugh out loud. LOL. You see? And there's people, there's books, there's shows, there's sayings, there's websites, there's places that make people laugh out loud. You see? And go eat some chocolate or spicy food, believe it or not. Or have a little sex. You know? It's cheap therapy, folks. You know, God designed us this way. And people understood this stuff. A merry heart still does good like a medicine. So that's endorphins. See, now serotonin. Serotonin is a hormone that boosts mood. It affects your social behavior, appetite, digestion, sleep, memory, your sexual desire, and your ability to perform that desire. It also helps avoid depression. Now, we can trigger the release of this happy hormone through positive thinking. That's right, folks. It's that simple. Just thinking positive can release serotonin in the brain. By speaking encouraging words to others. That's something you can do anytime you want, right? There's some of you here who send me little emails and stuff, and they're just nice stuff. Nothing heavy. You know, serotonin. You know, low intensity exercise like walking, stretching, beginner's yoga, or swimming are ways to trigger a release of serotonin. We also trigger it by getting outside in the sunlight and absorbing the right amount of vitamin D. And here's a great one. It's being grateful. Grateful is a great trigger. How many times you read Jesus says, "Oh, I thank you, Father." He was grateful. He lived gratefulness. Paul lived a life of gratefulness. Any great person is grateful. Maybe that's what makes them great. Well, gratefulness can release serotonin, which is a mood enhancer. Now dopamine. It's a pleasure hormone that lights up while awaiting a reward. It's just a moment before that reward happens. That's dopamine. Think of new love. You're just waiting for her to call or him to call. It's just that feeling that you had. Think of Hollywood cliffhanger. You're watching a movie and it's like you're stuck, you're glued to your seat. You have no idea what's about to happen. And you have that feeling. That's dopamine. Or a great book can do that to you. On the negative side, think about a gambler waiting for the dice to stop rolling. That feeling that they have, that's dopamine. So it can be used for negative too, you see. Or that marble that's spinning around the roulette table. Oh! That moment right before the oh! That's dopamine, you see. It's that anticipation. And we need that or you wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't do anything if it wasn't for dopamine. You'd never invest, you wouldn't save, you wouldn't travel, you wouldn't do anything. Now remember, these are hormones that God designed humans to function with. So we should be able to control them as well. When you watch a movie that has a scene that you just can't wait to see what's going to happen, that cliffhanger, or the sexual tension between the two main characters, you're waiting for them to fall in love, but they never seem to until right at the very end of the movie. It's dopamine that you're feeling. Dopamine. Why do we have that? You see? What about that Facebook alert chime? That triggers anticipation. It's like, okay, I can't do it right now, but you're waiting for, you're waiting to see who sent that. That's dopamine that makes you want to keep staring at your phone. Sounds silly, but that's what it is. It's a hormonal reaction. That feeling is dopamine. We need it. Advertisers master it. They've mastered it. They know exactly how to get you to feel a certain way so you'll buy their product. See, words of hope inspire it. You will get through this sickness. You may feel sick as a dog laying there. Somebody calls you up, will you pray for me? I say, you give them hope. And really that feeling they get after that sometimes is just dopamine. You see? In the parlance of our day, I could say that God is dope. That means excellent. God's dope, the kids might say. They get that from dopamine. It's dope. It's excellent. Now, oxytocin. This is the last one I'm going to share. Oxytocin is the final happy hormone that I'm going to discuss today. There's more of them. This is called the love hormone. The love hormone. It makes us feel loved. It makes us trust or bond with each other. It causes us to relax. It's released by physical contact. A hug, a kiss, an embrace. It's also triggered by laughter, by laughing. So this is the second one that's triggered by laughing. You see, that's one reason we love comedians. People love going to see comedians, or they like a friend who can tell a good joke, or there's certain people that just make you happy. That's why. It releases oxytocin in you, the love hormone. It's a connection hormone, you see. In most recent studies on dating, women place a good sense of humor in a man over his looks. Good thing for me. We knew that was coming, right? That, my friends, is because of the happy hormone oxytocin. That has gotten more guys, well, I guess I can't say it on this thing. It's gotten a lot of guys action who wouldn't normally get it. You see, so go to a comedy club. Go on a date with someone who makes you laugh. Get a massage. That can release the, oxytocin. Kiss your lover. Embrace your friend. Have you ever noticed that people who are huggers are usually the happiest of people? They are. Why? Now you know. It's oxytocin. It's touch. Some people say, I don't like to be touched. Well, they're missing out, baby. They are missing out. Humans are a social species. God's designed us. Now, maybe they get something happen in their past where they get turned off to it. I get that. You see, I understand some of that stuff. But I'm talking about, generally speaking, we're a social species. We're meant to touch. We're meant to sit shoulder to shoulder near a campfire, swapping stories. And the cool thing about stories around a campfire or a house or a table or a meal, whatever it is everybody begins to connect mentally because of these hormones. And we all seem to sync up. It's sort of weird. We're not alone. We are in this thing together, baby, and the hormones help us do that. See, hormones are good for a short time period, and then they cycle through our systems. You couldn't handle it if you always had those feelings. And that's what junkies and stuff want. They want to keep chasing that, don't they? It's part of it. Another reason you call it dope, right? So happiness is happiness is fleeting, but it's good. You've got to have that, or we wouldn't make personal connections with people. You couldn't imagine. I told that story a second ago about Jesus Christ hanging there. And you all have this mind picture, and you're running through that in your head when I was talking through that. And some of you even some people can even feel what he felt in some way. It's all hormones, people, or else the Bible would just be words if you didn't feel. These things make you feel. See, happiness does its job. It gets us laughing, anticipating, touching, and loving. It's crazy good. Bottom line, God designed us to be happy, and he gives us a full mental medicine chest full of self-helpers called the happy hormones, that I call happy hormones. If happiness is a sprint, joy is a marathon. Now we're going to go to joy. Now joy not only sticks with you for a long, long time, joy helps you stick with it for the duration. It helps you go through it no matter what you're going through. Hormones don't trigger joy the way that a well-held vision does. See, there's a difference. A joy isn't just an immediate thing. If you have an immediate rush or feeling or something, that's happiness. Joy is something you hang on to that's going to take you through the hellish places of life. The valley of the shadow of death. How could David fear no evil? Joy. 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 Joy keeps you going when the going gets tough. Joy has a long memory. Joy can help you through the most physically demanding and mentally punishing days. You can't be happy and sad at the same time, but you can be in a sad situation and still maintain your joy. You ever tried to comfort somebody who just lost a loved one? And then you say, we're going to see him again someday? Well, you're sad and joyful at the same time, but you're not sad and you're not happy. But you have joy because you know you're going to see that other person again someday, right? That's joy. How long in the future is that going to be? We don't know. 1,000 years, 10,000, 1,000,000 years? We don't know. But it's going to happen because the Bible says it's going to happen. You see, joy will be there when happiness departs. And happiness will depart, folks. But joy, you can keep that your whole life. But you got to work it. Remember the sprinter and the marathoner? The sprinter pulls up after 100 or 200 or 400 or 800 yards. I think 800 is the longest sprint, right? You see? But at that time, the elite marathoner knows she has at least 2 more hours to go. In my case, it would be hit me 8 more hours to go. You know, last one I did took me 8 hours, the Pikes Peak Marathon, just under. It's craziness. But I love it. You see, joy is a marathon. Joy is a marathon. It's weird. I've used this example before, but I mean, I remember this year I was coming down and my feet just hurt so much. I had all the energy I needed, but my feet were just hurting because I'm running down Pikes Peak. It's hills and rocks and roots, and you're stepping down 2 feet steps sometimes, and it's just pounding. And you're trying to do it as fast as you can and avoid people and not let them run into your back, you know, sometimes. And I remember I was doing it, and then you hit the pavement, and then it's just hot and hard because the temperature's up, and it's like, oh gosh. And then people start yelling your name out because it's on your bid. Come on, Mark, good job, 1 mile to go, or 1.5 miles to go. And then all of a sudden the pain's gone. Now I know why. Their encouragement has caused a rush of these hormones in me, which in the first one there that I mentioned, it's a pain reliever. So that's why the pain goes away at the end of a marathon, is because of the hormones. So it's sort of cool. But now we're talking about joy. So I just jumped backwards there for a second. But the elite marathoner knows she has hours to go. And that's joy. She just keeps moving and moving and moving and moving. And if she falls down, what does she do? Gets up because no one's going to pick her up. Rock gets in her shoe. She just runs with that rock in her shoe. She has to use the restroom. She holds it. Should. They don't always do. You know? So Hebrews, on that note, we'll switch back to the word. Hebrews 12:2 from King James. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. That's quite a vivid mind picture, but let's break it down a little bit. Looking unto means to consider. It means to consider this. Consider what Jesus went through. That's what it's saying here. Who for the joy that was set before him. See, he kept his joy present with him all the time. Joy was a part of Jesus. You see, the word for, the word for means to substitute. So he substituted in his mind joy for pain. He substituted joy for pain. He hung on to pain more than he thought about joy more than he thought about pain. Endured means to remain. Remain. It means to stick with it when everybody else decides to leave. Did he? Did Jesus? Yeah, he stuck with it. You know, he stuck with it when everybody, even his own followers, walked away at that point for a while. You see, that's joy. Who for the joy that was set before him. You know, he endured. He endured. He remained behind when everybody else left. He endured. See, joy is never passive. It's always aggressive. It's always active. And he endured the cross. Now, the cross, you know, we all think of a cross, a wooden cross, but cross really represents physical pain, physical abuse, a broken and beat down body. And some of you have bodies that have hurts. And it's hard not to think about those things sometimes. Or a loved one who has a sickness or a disease. It's tough, but you can still have joy. It may be hard to be happy, but you can still have joy no matter what. You see, a broken down, beat up body, joy can help us through physically tough times. That's what that's talking about. Who for the cross, like any marathoner, elite or not, there will be pain. There's going to be pain when you do a marathon. Nobody's going to escape that. You see, now despising, the word talks about despising the shame. Despising means to think against. It means to not accept it. It means to keep your thoughts above the fray. Your thoughts are above that thought. Despise it. Now, what thought? We're talking about shame. Well, what shame was there? Despising the shame. Whatever Jesus went through, there had to be shame. Now, just think about it. Most injuries will heal. A physical injury will heal, right? Somebody gets their hand cut off. It's going to hurt for a while. And they'll always wish they had that, but that pain's going to go away typically. Even phantom pain will typically dissipate at some point. You see, most injuries heal, but shame sometimes never heals unless you know how to deal with it. It's inside your mind. Unless you understand the long-term power of joy. Isn't there shame in sexual abuse? You ever known anybody who was abused sexually by somebody? It's a horrible abuse. And you think that person holds shame? They always do. You see, Jesus was stripped naked. And he was beat beyond recognition. His bones peeked out from under his skin. His joints were dislocated. You know, he was nailed to a post at almost eye level with the passers-by. He wasn't way up on some high cross. That's not how the Romans did it. They did it for intimidation purposes. They plunked that post right next to the road. And everybody who walked by, they're almost eye level, and they wagged their heads at him. They slandered him. They spit at him. The women chided him. You see, it was shame. Imagine being hung there naked. That's how the Romans did it, folks. It wasn't a pretty little thing. You would never have a picture of what he looked like in your Bible or hanging around your neck if you really read it. You see, some say the Roman soldiers even had their way sexually with him. They did this. They were known to do this. So I don't know. You know, some translators say they see it. I'm not sure that I do, but I just throw it out there. It's possible. Would there be shame in that? Oh, yeah. You know, they did those things in that day. Joy was what held him together, what kept his head together. Joy of what was awaiting him. It kept him, and it keeps us today out of the pity party. You know, out of the, what do they call people who, victim. You know, the victim mentality. You know, people who feel like they're victims have no hope. They have no joy. If God supplied all your need, then did he supply the poor people's need too? Sure. He had to have. But they're trained to feel pitiful. You see, joy will help. Jesus knew that he would sit at the right hand of the throne of God. What does that mean? God is not a singular being taking up one chunk of space, nor does he sit on a throne, nor does he even have a right hand. It says in the Bible that God occupies the universe, that God inhabits eternity. How big is that? How big is eternity? It's all the past, all the future, and all the now. All space, all time. God, everywhere you walk, you're walking through God. He's everywhere present. He hears every thought. He hears every prayer in every language. Everywhere you walk, you're walking through the Creator. So what does the throne of God mean? Well, until modern times, the throne represented the place of ultimate power. If you got summoned to the throne, you knew something really good was going to happen or something really, really bad was going to happen. Right? Yeah. If you've watched the Game of Thrones, you know, or some of these movies of King Arthur or whatever, if you're summoned to the throne, something good's going to happen, something bad's going to happen. But God's only good, he's only light, he's only love, so it's only going to be good. And so that's what Jesus Christ pictured. You know, at the right hand of the throne of God. Now think about the right hand. The right hand, all it represents is that's where all the good stuff's going to come. If you're at the right hand of the throne, And in that culture, the right hand was a hand of blessing. That's a hand that people would give pieces of bread with. You'd never use your left hand because people did something else with their left hand in those cultures. You see? And so the right hand would be where you would be able, that's the place you're going to receive. Okay? That's the place you're most likely to receive. So in his mind, he put himself at the greatest place of power, at the easiest place to receive deliverance. And did he receive deliverance? Got raised from the dead. That's pretty good. Pretty good. A new body. Changes forms. Fast as the speed of light. Still working like crazy today. You know, think about Paul in prison. Do you know that Philippians was written while he was chained up in prison? And how many times has he mentioned joy or rejoicing in Philippians? Or Timothy, or many of these epistles. I mean, Paul was a joy freak. He was hooked on joy. You see, but it wasn't that dopamine joy, that oxytocin, stuff. It wasn't happiness. It was joy. He was able to rejoice on every thought of the believers while he's chained up. He isn't thinking, oh, I wish I was out there. Those lucky stiffs out there. He didn't say that. All you lucky stiffs who aren't in chains. He goes, I joy. He was picturing in his mind, if you read it, he's picturing in his mind when he was going to be released, that he was going to spend time with them someday. Joy. That's joy. You see, the right hand of blessing, that's where he wants to be. That's where you receive anything and everything worthwhile. We set ourselves up in the best position in our mind to receive by maintaining joy. Jesus was our example to maintain our joy when our bodies are beat up or broken down. And we make our expected joy of future good overpower the mental and emotional hell we may be going through right now. It's possible, folks. I don't care what you've been through. It doesn't matter. Joy will help you. And if you can learn to control your thoughts and words a little bit better, then you can begin to start having some happiness. And I gave you some tips on things you could do to make those happen. We put ourselves in the very best position all the time so that whatever God's promised us, we will be there to receive it. Does it mean you might have to work a little harder sometimes? Yeah. Does it mean you might have to, talk to more people? Yeah. Does it mean you might have to cut loose an employee or a business partner? Yeah. What is it going to take for you to keep your joy? What's it going to take to do that? See, joy is a marathon, folks. It's our long game. You keep it up your whole life. Now, in summation, I hope you see now how happiness and joy are not synonymous. They do not mean the same thing. One is not better than the other. They're both necessary. We desperately need happiness, and we desperately need joy. We couldn't get through our lives without them. We would never make friends without them. We'd never have relationships or enjoy books or movies or stories without them. We would never take a stand for truth or love or light or what's right without joy and happiness. Happiness is our quick fix, our sprinter. It helps us laugh, anticipate, touch, feel, and love. But God designed us to trigger that reaction and receive the benefits of hormones like endorphins or serotonin or dopamine or oxytocin. But joy is our long game, our marathoner. Joy helps us keep going when everyone else quits. Joy takes us all the way to our prize. So like I opened with, happiness is a sprint, while joy is a marathon. God bless you all.